All right. All right. So I'm ready to now get into the audio. So three, two, one. Welcome back, everyone, to another exciting episode of Aaron's Opinion, the podcast for blind people, where we speak about critical issues in the blindness community and all other issues from across the universe and galaxy. Today, we have the distinct honor in being joined by Micah Thomas, CEO of, I believe it's pronounced Megallion Media, otherwise known as Storymore. Before we get into the beautiful story of Storymore, we need to know who Micah is and basically how your life has led up to you creating such an incredible product and exactly what this does. And I am incredibly interested in voice acting in this whole genre. So this is right up my alley, and we have a lot of people around the Aaron's Opinion community who are very engaged in this stuff. So really dig in from the bottom of your soul. Just dig straight into it. Who are you as a person, and then how did you come to create Storymore? And I'll mute my microphone and sit back for a good while and let you talk as much as you want. Go right ahead.
Well, first of all, Aaron, thank you so much for the opportunity to help share the story here on
Always
your.
welcome. Always
Uh,
welcome here.
Thank you, and I'll do the best I can not to talk too much. It's um, to me an incredible story, but also some might consider pretty mediocre, so to speak. I'm just a guy, right, that just loves audio dramas, really good stories. Um, I enjoy great films, older things, from Casablanca all the way to new modern day things. So I've just always been such a fan of storytelling, and my parents sort of instilled that in me as a kid, as any kid that loves stories and watching all these things unfold on TV and all of that kind of thing. But for me, it was more audio, it was more radio. So we did a lot of radio theater on the radio during car rides, PBS specials, or whatever the case may be. We listened in our local area. There was something called Faith Radio, and they did an expose of several radio podcasts or what we would consider today to be fictional podcasts. But they did a lot of radio stories and radio theater from things like shows like Adventures in Odyssey or something like that. Look any of those up, and those are really good. And as a matter of fact, probably the longest running radio drama podcast there is. And so from early on, I really got caught into those types of things. Later on, around ninth grade, my love for radio theater was reignited. My English teacher, Mrs. Usher, decided to play something from a very familiar name, Focus on the Family Radio Theater, which did a version of C.S. Lewis and the Chronicles of Narnia. But man, and I was just so uh, inspired by how the stories were done, how well the production was done, the music, everything, and it just took you just with your ears alone into this great story. So, from that standpoint, I just held the love for audio dramas and radio theater from then on. And as an adult, I got into Sirius satellite radio a little bit and enjoyed classic radio there. And I listened to old things from the 1940s like The Shadow or The Whisperer or Johnny Dollar, Dragnet, any of that kind of stuff, and appreciated what they were able to do with uh, what may have been what very little they had in terms of technology at the time, and still were able to produce really engaging stories with just the audio or radio formats. So all of that just confirms my love of audio based storytelling. I'm a content creator myself, doing everything from graphic design, web design, all that kind of thing, all the way to audio drama production or even some independent film work and things like that. And so, as a person, though, I am a person of low vision. I have albinism, which has affected me in several ways as far as my vision goes. And that led me to Alabama School for the Blind when I was a kid for a couple of years. And that's where me and my current wife met as well. She is also low vision, glaucoma, and a couple of other things, Y-sutural cataracts as a kid, and so on and so forth. Uh, so anyway, the to try to wrap up that whole story about how Storymore came about, we I was walking probably I guess 8 years ago or 7 years ago now. Um, at the time, again, I'm just a regular guy, right? Didn't have a car, and we were going through a rough patch, and I was actually walking about a 2.5 or 3 hour walk from some errand I had to run, which was downtown, and where we lived at the time didn't have major transport or any of those types of things, and Uber wasn't as popular. So I just walked, to downtown. I've always been sort of a walker, and so I was on the way back home from doing my errand, and I was looking on my cell phone for some kind of solution that was like a Netflix style or whatever um, catalog that I could, or a subscription service that I could like subscribe to, be able to pay $5 or whatever for all the audio dramas that I wanted. I was sure that there were a lot in the world, because I could find them in various places, but never a place that brought them all together under one umbrella. So I spent, hour or two researching on Google, didn't find anything, and by the time third hour I'd gotten home, I realized, well, either it's not there, or I'm really poor at finding this after so many searches and search types and so on and so forth. The closest thing was Audible at the time, which was audiobooks, and that wasn't what we were looking to do. So that's what spawned it. That's the idea of how it got generated. Was my personal love of audio dramas and just not finding all of them under one banner, similar to how other brands had been able to catalog and curate all these really good titles and stories like Netflix or Hulu or Disney Plus or anything like that. So we came home, started Storymore. I wrote on a whiteboard that day the date and all of that, and from then we began to put together a team that could try to make these audio dramas, as well as locate the best ones throughout the world and try to bring those together under this new brand. So that's as short as I can make the answer. I'm so sorry, but that's the story.
First of all, you should never apologize for speaking too long. If anything, I am a long form interviewer, so I'm trying to get you to talk. I love people that just talk and talk and talk. Literally, I let someone talk for 50 minutes without interrupting them. So trust me when I tell you, I want you to talk. Um, your story rings so many bells in my heart. It truly does. When I was, first of all, I'm 33 years old. I have glaucoma
Mm,
and I have a congenital heart defect.
mm,
And I was a sickly baby. And from day one, from my parents having to drive back and forth to a hospital with me, I was immersed in audio, immersed in talk shows, immersed in radio. Similarly to you, from day one, I was just immersed. My
mm,
whole life was audio. Um, and then what started to happen over my life is I just kept listening to a lot of great talk shows of the time and things like that. And over time, and by the time 2020 rolled around, I was and still am teaching English as a second language online because, as I mentioned to Jivian,
mhm.
I am. By the way, I'm also a French speaker. By the way,
Oh,
so
wow.
yeah, so I teach English as a second language. I'm really into linguistic acquisition and that whole thing. But anyway, I was listening to a lot of podcasts around the blindness community, as you probably do, and
Mm,
I noticed that they were excellent, and they are, but they were not open to my opinion. And I am not afraid to admit that I am a very opinionated person. If you
mm,
don't want to talk to someone who's outspoken, don't talk to me because I am the most outspoken person in the industry.
mm,
And I care tremendously about producing great audio just as you do. And so I created Aaron's Opinion because I wanted to give you and so many other great people the chance to come up to my microphone and share what's in your heart and really want to
mm.
connect with the world. Later at
Right.
the end of the show, by the way, we're joined also up here by the Pretoria office of Aaron's Opinion. We have listeners all over the world. You were saying how you wanted to make sure that you can include people who speak different languages. Let me tell you, I can get you people who speak all sorts of languages on your in your story. We have people that speak 4 and 5 different languages that I know. So we can build a whole global show with all the continents easily. No ifs,
Magnificent.
buts, or coconuts. Yeah, completely. So okay, so one thing that I noticed just to kind of dig in, I'm just purely curious. So story more though, let's kind of break down, I guess, where people can find it. So that part was a little confusing at first, even to me. So I noticed the upload style is you guys kind of created a page. I'm not going to say you created a podcast, but you basically took the audio of the stories and created sort of a page on Apple Podcasts. Additionally, too, I noticed that you have an app on the App Store. Now, this is probably my imagination, but I tried to download that app and I could not. In all honesty, it said that the app wasn't available in my region. So, what's going on there? How does someone get actually start listening to Story more? How do you organize all the titles? How does it really work? So, go into all the details, please.
Sure. So there's a current standard, and obviously there's strategic plans that are currently underway. So currently, you can find Storymore on Spreaker by iHeartRadio by going to Spreaker.com, search Storymore. We have a whole page there. That page is mirrored on Apple Podcasts. So we also have an Apple Podcast channel. Again, just search Storymore. We are mirroring that same thing to Spotify, and then basically anywhere you would find your favorite podcast. So we want to have a Story More page anywhere you look for us, basically. In addition to that, there's storymore.com, which is currently being redesigned and reassessed for a much easier user experience, so to speak. And from that end on the App Store, we're still available on Google Play if you search Story More as well. And our Apple side, if you were going to the Apple App Store, we are redesigning that app. So it's currently down, but should be back up shortly. I'm not sure when your audience would be hearing this, but again, at least search it. If it's there, great, and available. So that's what's taking place at this point.
Wonderful. Yeah, in all honesty, I did search for it on Spotify because I'm a Spotify downloader. I'm
Mm-hmm.
just being truthful. I couldn't find anything. So I
Yeah, it's
typed in
not
like
there
all
yet. Yeah.
okay, okay. Yeah, that kind of threw me. That was definitely interesting. Yeah, each person's different. I'm a Spotify guy for now.
Mm-hmm.
I really think I got to tell you, I think that Spotify is always the easiest thing to use, especially for
Mm-hmm.
blind people. So yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but that's super cool. So now, let me tell you about kind of my interest in stories and then my interest in acting, and I'll kind of put it all together. When I
Sure.
listen to a great audio drama, I really love audio dramas that are mostly about a couple sections really touch me. I am really interested in deep philosophical stories.
Mm-hmm.
Surely you remember reading the book The Giver and watching the film The Giver, right?
I've seen the film.
You've seen the film of The
Right.
Giver, right? The people
Right.
who live in a futuristic world, and there's
Mm-hmm.
a protagonist, and so that type of philosophical story that tends to be, my favorite thing to listen to. Those types of stories.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Additionally, I love a good thriller,
Mm.
like a real action-packed thriller. I love a good horror with strong storyline. In other words, I love a horror with deep story, not a horror with jump scares, although I don't mind them. But I love a
Mm.
horror with depth and kind of comic relief at the same time. When you get a horror, but the
Sure.
acting is so outlandish that it's like laugh out loud. That kind of flavor,
Sure.
that's
I
kind of
got
my flavor. Some
it.
crazy.
Right.
And then of course things about survival and nature. So tell me, what are your plans? What are all of the choices? And then so I've done, and our the Pretoria office here, Latabo, can tell you more at the end, but I've helped out an organization. Have you heard of Zollyhood, by the way? Uh-oh. Uh-oh. Hello?
I'm so sorry. That was a technical glitch on my side.
Okay, yep, please, yep, please, yep.
Happened.
So I have a method to my madness. The reason why I do that, it's nothing personal about you, is that we have a live audience. So I have to keep the audience muted, and then I have to unlock them. So if you mute, then you're stuck. Okay, no problem.
No,
Have
no
you
apologies.
have you seen? Do you know what Zollyhood is? Have you ever heard of Zollyhood Universe or Zollyhood?
I've heard, yes.
I've heard. Okay, because I'm very familiar with them and I've done some voice acting for them. So they are an incredible resource
Mm,
now, I'm going to preface this. They're an incredible resource of volunteer. I said the
Hmm.
word volunteer
Hmm.
actors who are acting for a hobby, not as a profession. But
Sure.
that doesn't stop them from producing amazing content.
Sure.
So I'm very familiar with that. I've done some voice acting for them, playing some roles there. I've also voiced a video game character. There's this guy that I know of on Discord, and he creates these virtual escape rooms, and they
Hmm.
needed someone to play like the devil, like a evil entity. So I voice that type of thing. I like to voice characters that are evil, that are either very evil or very good. I have to be. I would say my voice, just the way I talk, is either an authority figure or someone who does something really bad,
Mm.
but nothing in the middle. So
Mm.
what do you think about that? What are your plans for Storymore and some projects? And then how would someone get involved, and how do you maybe potentially see me helping you guys out in a small way at some point? What do you really think?
Well, to sort of wrap in your first question and this one, Storymore, the goal of it is to essentially turn into another global entity like Netflix, Hulu, Disney Plus, or whatever, except from an audio standpoint, that can be a central catalog hub for basically curating the best audio dramas produced throughout the world, which means obviously we would attempt to have a full category for every single genre of stories. And we've done a pretty good job so far reaching out into the community of people who do audio drama podcasts and series and so on and so forth. And they're all at various levels. You can tell that there are some that are just making these in their basement. Then there are some that are doing, Kickstarters and other crowdfunding things to really produce high end things. Then there are other things that are backed by major studios, etc. And of course, depending on their distribution and circulation, is based on their region and how important audio dramas is to that region. Our goal is to become a household name globally, to just know that's exactly where you go to get the best audio dramas, or at least amongst those that might do it. The fact is, audio drama right now, as a content position or a content creation position, we're not the only ones that do it. Obviously, there are hundreds, thousands of people that produce these things. The question is, how good are they in terms to all of these particular things that we try to check off where it comes to a list, right? We believe in having great actors that can really take the words off the page and really make us believe you're that person, right? So we look for that. Number two, we try to have strongly custom made, custom written, custom composed cinematic music scores that are going to help enhance the mood or whatever's taking place. So we approach it from a film aspect. From that end, we don't just believe in throwing in any type of music. It really does have to fit. So all of it is custom done for us, or licensed to be custom done. And then third, we believe in great Foley, great sound effects, and great atmosphere. So great things that will allow your mind, give your mind the fuel to envision whatever it is that is taking place. We've moved away from sort of licensed pieces on that. We create a lot of our own sound these days. And in addition to that, we try to, all of our productions are made from a 360 first standpoint, or from a surround sound first standpoint, so that it's designed for a headphone listener, or one that would be listening to some type of device. It's okay on Bluetooth. We obviously it's mixed really well, so you can enjoy it on Bluetooth in your car or some sort of outside system. But we prioritize our listening experience for those that are slipping on a pair of headphones. We're hoping, as we get a lot of testimony from people who have listened and listeners, that the Foley was so good, or the atmospheric sound editing was so good, that they're able to, they turn their head because they thought a door opened over behind them, or they can hear a person walking up to their left or whatever. The idea is we place the listener in the middle of the story, so that way the story is happening around them. From that standpoint, for our own productions, there's probably about, at this point, 120 Storymore originals that are still ideas on page. We've probably gotten through not even a quarter of those yet. But that's the fun part. There's consistent ideas being added to the list. And so we're constantly trying to write and then move these things to production and then get them out into the distribution circuit. So from that end, that's kind of our process as a whole. There's normally an idea that's shot out there, and it could be in any particular category or an idea I come up with as I write a lot of these myself. As an example, one of our most recent shows called Barley, which is a psychological thriller, um, it that one was an idea. I think at 9:30 in the morning, we had a full script by 1:30 in the afternoon, and all of the voice actors that were going to be involved in is like three people in that one, but they all had a copy by the end of the day, and I think we were already into dialogue editing the next day and had that thing completed the next day after that. Now that's certainly not the case for most of our shows, but that does show in a sampling sort of way how our process goes. We have a great idea, some kind of concept, whatever. We write based on that. And then we source from a talent pool that we've put together. We prefer to work with the same actors, and we prefer to have actors who can provide us a bit of variety in the type of characters that they voice. So if you can do two characters in the same production and they sound like totally different people, that's absolutely magnificent, and that is what we prefer to work with. That being said, we're not above working with those who are essentially, for lack of a better word, typecast or only do one type of person. If that type of person is really special, we'll find a way for that, the essence of that character, to be in other productions as well. That's following a 1940 model of radio where you really heard a lot of the same voices in a bunch of different productions. If you were adamant about listening to radio at that time, you'd hear a lot of the same actors just doing different things. So no different than what you have now. Everybody has their range and their ability, and we try to give everybody that respect. So once the talent gets it, they send it back to us. They can work remotely. That's the beautiful part about Story Wars. We have actors absolutely everywhere. It's truly a global team. We have an actor in Cape Town, South Africa. There's London. There's Ontario, Canada. There's New York, Chicago, LA, Orlando, New York, etc. So it's quite extensive as far as the people that we are able to work with. They're able to work at home remotely, and then when it's available in studio or something of that end, they send in their voice recordings to us when they're done. Normally, like 2 or 3 takes. So we have a lot of options to work from when we're approaching editing because there's not a ton of rehearsal. I think we've maybe had 3 table reads in our company's history. Most of the time, people get the scripts, understand the that parenthetical direction that's in the script, and they provide us a really good read. And sometimes we'll take bits from their first take or second take and third take and come up with what is the final take. Uh, Outside of that, there's not a lot of rehearsal. To give you a kind of funny story, so to speak, there was one of our earlier pieces that was a flagship we were working on to try to drive our concept. Um, there was an actor in Cape Town, South Africa, and she did what I will term as a romance scene with an actor in Chicago. Now, these people had never met, they never had a rehearsal, they never talked to each other, never once. And they were able to send us in enough material to edit in together what seemed like a very, very believable romance scene to where a lot of people were very, very interested in how we pulled that off without them being in the same room or any of that sort of thing. That's the magic, I think, of what we're able to do with technology, with people who understand the essence of good storytelling, how to approach a character, etc. And we're able to put that together in a really good dialogue edit. After the dialogue editing, we go into soundscaping, which is make sure every sound effect and everything is just placed in a way where, again, you feel like you're in the center of the story and you can follow the action of what's taking place, people walking across the room, et cetera, et cetera. It's all being driven by the sounds that your ears are hearing. And beyond that, the music scoring is the very last thing, which a lot of times is being produced as the story's playing. Um, there's a lot of MIDI keyboard controlling going on and things like that to actual pieces while listening to the story, so it fits perfectly. Um, which is a little unorthodox to other styles, as there's time codes and all of these types of things. But we have a real organic approach around here. So we want everything to feel very natural, sometimes spontaneous, but fits as a part of the creative process. So in a large nutshell of a 10-minute answer, that is Storymore as a whole and how we
I love
work.
it. I absolutely love it. Love it, love it, love it. Yeah, no, you're very right. And with technology now, it's very easy to have people from different parts of the world working on something. Oh, you recorded, WhatsApp it back to us when you're done, that type of thing, and then edit it all together. It's a lot easy. This whole process of creativity is a lot easier than it ever was. I mean, 20 years ago, this process would have been a huge thing. But
Mm,
now this is a lot easier now to start
absolutely.
getting these things done. It's really incredible. Yeah. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I would say with my voice, I would say that with you can kind of tell by the way that I talk that I kind of have this dramatic voice. I don't really do other voices, but this is my real dramatic voice. This is me, you know. So my voice is my voice. You know, that's kind
Mm.
of what I like to envision and like to believe. So and yeah, and how does the like soundscaping work? In other words, exactly how does that work where if you're listening on a headset, which I always recommend listening to things over headphones, but how does it work where people can be kind of immersed and how does the sound actually travel in that psychological way? So how does that software work, by the way?
So two things. First of all, to the respect of your voice, if I were having some fun with that, with you and your audience, I would say definitely you come across for me as doctors, lawyers, police officers, something official from that standpoint.
It's funny you
Uh,
say it because I've already played both a doctor and a lawyer.
Yeah, yeah. So I could buy that quite easily. Um, with a little twisting, maybe some fantasy stuff. But again, that's the fun of doing any of this. And even for me, I voice acting these things as well, and I constantly have fun trying to challenge myself and see how far I can stretch my own range. I myself also enjoy playing, someone who's a villain and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Have this kind of dark tone to it. It helps when you have a really good microphone set up. In some of our studios, I go to have a Nilman U87, which is my favorite mic and preferred. Obviously, $3,500 worth of good sound quality there. But from that standpoint, I'm able to do things in that setup I may not be able to do on a Shure SM7 or something of that nature. So again, a lot of this helps. Everything from a good mic to a preamp and a great system help to that end. Um, from that point, though, not everybody understands frequency response and so on and so forth, and all the technicalities that go into, or the technical things or specifications that go into a microphone and how it be good with your voice. There's actually a lot of people that can do really well with less quality microphones, shall we say, because it's simply their voice type, and that mic is made specifically to enhance their natural sound, whereas others may require a more expensive piece of equipment or hardware to be able to do the different things that they'd like to do. So again, half of this, and I understand the term in Hollywood for years has been, oh, they made me look a lot better, or they made me sound a lot better than I actually am, and that's the beauty of what we do. We get a lot of I would term really poor takes sometimes, because sometimes people are able to do this in Source Connect or something like that, and they're able to do it live, and we're able to provide instantaneous feedback. Oh, and redo that line again this way or something like that. But most of the time, it is them on their own, their assessment based on our direction in the script, and they shoot their shot, right. And sometimes that does not come across very well. But because of the editing techniques, we're able to take that take and make it something absolutely magical at the end of the day. And then, of course, we have some actors that are just so good at what they do, it doesn't matter. It's actually hard to wade through their recording. Tanya Milojevic, our VP of accessibility, is one of those. I know when I send Tanya something, number one, she's going to embody it in such a way that you can't help believe that's actually that person. That's that character. She's so good at what she does. She adds such depth to her approach to characters, which makes it difficult when we actually get her file in, because I know I'm going to have three golden takes. How do you choose from three golden takes? You can't use them all, so you have to decide, and that makes it just as difficult to edit her takes as it does finding somebody who's not very good. You got to get them to come back and redo it, or redo a part or something like that, and they just don't get exactly what you're going for, which can happen from time to time. So editing provides us a lot of flexibility, and truly magic, I'll say, to be able to come up with an interesting final product. Now, to that end, back to your question in terms of how we essentially push this forward, and how we make that soundscaping, and how do we make that atmospheric magic happen. We actually it's not really proprietary or anything. We actually just choose to use Logic here, which is a film editing software. For many that know, we've been using probably been using Logic for years for film editing or something like that. Apple, we're sort of Apple leaning here, although the rest of my staff would disagree. They're all Microsoft leaning with Windows. But when it comes to creative things, we've always sort of used Apple here. And so Logic is a film editing software. You would assume we'd be using, Adobe Premiere or something like that, which is completely audio based. But we view what we do as movies, just without the video. So that's always been the approach, is to use Logic. And within Logic, there are some soundscaping tools to allow us to move the sound sources around within a 360-degree range. Next year is our plan to advance some of our mastery over to Atmos, which will allow for us to truly create the space with things like spatial audio advancements in the sound space. So even if you moved your head, the sound would stay where it's supposed to be, respective to that. We're very excited about some of those advancements. And again, just getting even further with Atmos. So again, that your system will be able to identify, which it works really well with headphones. And if you listened with a 5-point surround sound system, or 7.1, either one as well. So our goal is to make sure that we're paying attention to the things that are happening in the scene. The difficulty with that is viewing it as a film. The question always is, well, where's the camera? Typically in film production, wherever the camera is where the audio is located. And those that have listened to films have already been subconsciously or unconsciously trained to approach film and sound in an intuitive way. So even if you'd never watched a film, visually seen one, your ears and brain have already been trained to readjust as if the camera has moved, because typically the audio shifts as well toward wherever the point of action is, wherever the camera is. And so people who are speaking farther away obviously sound further away, not because they're that way and there was one camera and there was one microphone sitting next to the person. No, that's the audio guy coming back after the fact and realigning the array of microphones to make sure that person sounds as if they're next to the door, even though the camera was next to subject A, who was obviously getting a close up or something like that. So the film industry has done a great job of already taking care of training society of how to hear a camera change. And so because of that, it makes our job much easier in what we do, because we're able, that's all we have to do is answer the question is, where's the camera? Where's the action? Where's the focal point of audio? And everything kind of blends around that. And then keeping up with what action took place, because this is not a film. We have to remember certain things, like as an example, in our most recent audio drama, the Eve of Independence, which is about the Declaration of Independence and the night before it was signed. I'd like to think that there was conversation that happened between the writers, and so I wrote one about these gentlemen and how they come together to sort of discuss where their fears, where their disagreements, whatever the case may be. And in that particular setting, which I have deemed as Thomas Jefferson's home, there's a couple of moments where a few of the gentlemen walk around the drawing room. And you have to be able to hear that. And you have to be able to remember that Benjamin Franklin walked from the back of the room and took 5 steps forward, closer to the subject, or the listener, I should say, in this case. Just like you have to remember that Roger Sherman walked from the left side of the room all the way over to the right. Well, the questions we have to answer: how many steps did that take? What's that going to sound like if you're the listener and you're just sitting there and Roger Sherman were to walk across the room? How far is he away? How would those footsteps sound? That type of thing. And then when he gets to where he's standing, there's a shift in his feet. Those are all of the things we pay attention to that hopefully are completely unnoticed by the listener, that it was done so well that it just sounds natural. There's nothing that causes you to pause and ask questions or anything like that, or wonder what happened, because you simply heard reality that we put forward. Our job is just to remember that Roger Sherman is still on the right side of the room should he move again, and to make sure that his voice stays on the right side of the room, exactly 6 feet away where we put him. Which is not exactly the same issue you have to worry with when you're doing film, so much, because there's markers and other such things that help people to understand, where they should be, and all of that. So anyway, that's an approach to some of our thinking about how we do atmosphere and things like that. And to put a cap on that, we pay great attention to things like weather, the sound of the room, how the sound would bounce off certain things. There's lots of tools within Logic that allow us to do that and create a space where let's say a stone or a cave may sound different from a library. A library may sound different from a bathroom. A bathroom may sound different, obviously, than open streets, if you will. So they're all of these things have to be answered, and the idea is to make sure that it's done in such a way where the listener absolutely does not notice anything other than this is exactly how this should sound.
Yeah, yeah. It's a very clever and a brilliant thing. And it's also very subtle too. We notice, but as a creator, I love noticing myself. I love being observant of the subtleties. And I think people can tell the difference. Whether they think it's natural or not, I think that the listener can tell because that's why we listen. So I think it's very subtle and very present.
Absolutely.
Yeah, yeah. So back to my language skills, me being a bilingual person. So, and this kind of relates to your audience. I think that the audience that you would have would be a very eclectic and a very active audience. So, what research have you done about your listeners? Because that's a critical part of podcasting. But if you're creating audio drama, you're going to probably have a very specific audience. What do you know about them?
Well, actually, on the contrary, again, our goal to emulate other streaming platforms. In our case, where we have a specific subject matter in any other podcast that would speak to a very specific audience, uh, we're being uh, uh, we're trying to channel to a wide array of people who have interest. So, from that standpoint, our job is to just make sure we mimic every category or every genre of entertainment, and then try to fill that pipeline, which is going to draw again various communities to those particular areas of stories, and so we consider ourselves to have the exact same target audience as Netflix or any other streaming platform. The only difference is ours is streamlined, specifically as a priority, or if you will, or the backwards end of the funnel, so to speak, to those who are blind and visually impaired. Because as you mentioned earlier in this podcast, sound is our world, and to various degrees for those that may have various levels of visual impairment, from blindness all the way to low vision or whatever, what have you. And so, therefore, sound is much more of a priority. How it's done, the approach to it, the level of detail given to it, etc., is provided to that. But we're also all human and all appreciate different styles. And you mentioned also earlier your personal flavor of entertainment. So from that standpoint, our goal is just like a really good restaurant or buffet or whatever. We try to provide something for absolutely everyone, so they have a reason to come to the Story More brand and listen to a story. So from that standpoint, we do attempt to be relevant in terms of our research. Our research more has to do with um, how can we be relevant with stories that people want to listen to, and so that might have a range of priority. There's a much larger pool, if you will, of those who are doing audio drama podcasts, of those that are doing horror, or those that are doing some sort of drama or psychological thriller, sci-fi. Those are the popular categories, and the reason they're popular is because they're easy to do, and they're also normally contemporarily relevant, or you know reaching into the future in some fantasy way. Not to mention the sound effects are a lot easier to come by if you're licensing them. It's much more difficult to get the sounds of genuine horses or something like that, or something from a previous period, because those sounds are not accessible necessarily to recreate these days as much. So the work of the sound technician for some of our period things is a lot harder because, well, we don't really either we got to license it or we got to figure out what did that sound like, because none of us were alive in 1751 to discover what this particular Foley might be. So again, I think due to those reasons and the scripts people can write, sci-fi is ruling the audio drama world right now, as well as horror, because they're really easy to do. The music is easy, all of that kind of thing. So it's a lot less work. You just have to make sure the story is normally pretty good and the actors can deliver. Our challenge is, how do we do things like westerns? How do we do things like period pieces? How do we do things that are comedies? How do we do action films? All things which are so easy to do when you're in film, because everybody can see what you're doing. They can see facial expressions, what actions took place, even with Netflix or whatever having descriptive video. Our platform has none of that. We have to still provide the fuel to allow the imagination to assume whatever is taking place. And we have to do that appropriately. And we do that with dialogue, and we do that with appropriate Foley, and we do that with appropriate atmosphere and story, and then musical accents or enhancements to make that impression in the mind. So for us, it's not so much researching our audience as it is, how do we make sure what we do put forward, because we're trying to reach every audience, is quality? How is it engaging? And how have we done it in a way where our audience wants to come back and listen to more?
Yeah, love it. Absolutely. You are so right. You are so right. Have you ever watched? Oh, yeah. One of my other interests and passions in life is history. I'm a huge history, Paleolithic, paleoanthropology nerd. Like I love watching that stuff too on YouTube. That's one of my
Mm,
other sections of interest too, is just history. Have you ever seen the YouTube channel Life in the 1800s?
I have not.
Really? You mentioned something to me just a moment ago. You said that we don't know what it sounds like
Mm,
in hundreds of years ago. Actually, we
mm,
do. There's a
awesome.
channel where they collected, now this is so cool. They
That's great.
collected all of the interviews that were done on TV in the early 1900s
Mm,
of people who grew up in the 1800s. So you can hear people who were alive like before the Civil War and in the
sure.
1830s and 40s. And it's incredible. And you can hear how they talked and their vocab and the way they sounded and the way they phrased things back then, hundreds of years ago. So actually, you can hear people from the
That's great.
1800s. It's utterly fascinating. Much of it's highly disturbing, but it's incredibly deeply fascinating. Anyway, just you said that, and I thought, no, that's not true. Of course, you can hear people from the 1800s. Life in the 1800s, of
Awesome.
course. Yeah,
Awesome.
yeah.
Awesome.
But I,
So,
mean, I hate to disappoint you. Those people have long since passed away, so I can't call them for you. But you can still. That would actually be discreetly a good point for you to hear, well, how would someone have spoken back then?
sure.
One of the things that I notice is the people who grew up in the 1800s, they spoke with more of an Atlantic, kind of almost like a British way of speaking. They had more of a British accent, whether they were Americans or not. That's one overarching thing. Yeah.
Sure.
Uh-huh.
And even
Yeah.
and even from that standpoint, and certainly I'm going to be right on that YouTube channel later today, I'm sure. But even beyond that, whatever period piece we may be doing, in
Hmm.
1325, some
Ooh.
some things BC, etc., different
Oh, I
areas,
love that.
etc. So from
Yeah.
that standpoint, again, there's always some question as far as that goes that might help if we had a time machine, at least whenever they come up with. But until then, we do our best
Hmm.
work, and of course, some of that is mimicry of others that have some idea, have done some research, etc. So I appreciate that particular reference. Our goal, however, is to make sure that the listener, again, is not utterly distracted by what may be considered something that's a problem, an issue, a sound quality issue, something that's not relatable, these types of things. And so that's where we try to make sure we keep our stability.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. You can easily research how things were in the medieval era. Just YouTube it. There's all sorts of people who put together research about that. So you can easily research what vocab was used back then, how they would have acted. It's easy to know. It's
Absolutely.
a very, very interesting. What about yeah, this is kind of an odd one. Have you ever thought of doing a Paleolithic story where, I don't know, like a group of ancient people, whether they're like Neanderthals or something like that, has to have some interaction? Or have you ever thought of like some sort of oh, here's a good one. I mean, this gets really silly, but like someone gets sucked back in history and they end up in the Paleolithic era 50,000 years ago and they have to survive or something like
Mm.
that. Yeah, that would be weird.
We're always open to every single concept, you know.
Well, well,
I think
after
there's
you
a good story to be told everywhere.
well, after you talk to me long enough, you might come to realize you don't necessarily want all my ideas because some of my ideas are really weird and crazy. You don't necessarily want to say that. Some of the stuff I come up with is scared, but you'd be shocked at how many people I've scared away over the years. Um, no, no, we can do one where I don't know. I'm just using I love to use my imagination too. Like, let's say that someone gets sucked back thousands of years ago, and they're a ling. Okay, here's the storyline: a linguist today accidentally gets sucked back in history when they read a ancient text and they have to go live with the ancient people of the Paleolithic era, and they have to solve a linguistic riddle to survive and to get back to their modern era. So
Well,
that would be really weird. That would be a
well,
weird
you
one.
you heard it here first, guys. This is how Storymore is created, and this is how we begin to get these things on a path where they can become audio productions.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah. It fascinates me a lot because you say that your audience is broad, which is great and wonderful. But so, what countries tune in? I mean, surely you've looked at your analytics. Generally, what countries are you reaching? Mostly U.S., mostly English-speaking countries. I'm very interested in that. How different parts of the world interpret your stories in a different way. What do you think?
Well, while we're actually still at a sort of revamping phase, COVID for us, we had some delayed responses in 2021 and things like that. So really, this year is the first year we've hit the gas to go back to full operations. And so we're starting to get some of those numbers and stats and things that we can look at and metrics as we begin to make certain decisions and whatnot. We do have a decent representation. There's downloads in Germany and Australia and Canada and so on and so forth. But obviously, the bigger numbers are out of the UK. And we feel that's cultural, mostly because, obviously with BBC Audio and so many others, it's not a odd form of medium entertainment to us. It's mainstream over there, very similar to how films are. And so their audience, their natively things like radio plays are still adaptable and still marketed in a way where they can enjoy. So we've actually been found over there quite a good bit and haven't actually invested any marketing dollars over there for that purpose. So it's definitely organic growth. Here in the US, you mentioned the word audio drama. In general, in our experience, the first question is, what's that? Or is that like an audio book? Or they try to liken it to something that they can understand. Normally, that immediately goes away once we play a sample, and they're like, "Oh yeah, I'd listen to that. Absolutely, that sounds cool." But before that, just using the term audio drama, we have discovered there's going to be a little bit of education of the market here in the domestic U.S. But obviously, as we are making connections with our community and making connections throughout and with podcasts and things like that, people are becoming aware. Our goal is like I said. We know that the podcasting community, in terms of creation of audio drama podcasts, not just podcasts in general, we mean specifically audio dramas. Um, it's a huge subterranean community, and again, you could argue all day long about how good they are. I would say probably 90% of the creators don't check every box, and most of them genuinely aren't very good. But they're passionate storytellers, and they at least they at least give it their try and their attention and their hobby work. But that being said, for the mass amount that are out there, that 10% that I would consider to be extremely high quality because of all of those things that I mentioned: story, ability of the actors, music, the sound effects, everything done in a way that's like, yes, this is top notch. Is still a very large number. So the question is, if all of these things are out there, why don't we have a audio drama category in the in the Golden Globes, or why they're not billboards everywhere marketing that as well? It's because it's just not mainstream, and it could be and should be. I just think that there should be a pipeline to get it there. So that's one of the goals of Storymore, is to try to develop that pipeline from this huge subterranean world to bring these great audio dramas, performers, and other such to mainstream. And in doing so, providing a platform for those who are just, at home and trying to find a way to express themselves. This is a great opportunity for them to take on a role that will allow them to be any character they want to be. They're not limited by a disability or anything of the sort. They're able to be a cowboy or a secret agent or any of those things. They can act in any type of story that their talent will allow. So that could be comedies, rom coms, action, horror, sci fi. Whatever it is, and they're able to enjoy playing those roles and being the star without the limitations, liabilities, or trouble of doing this with Hollywood through a camera, or being rejected for the same. So that's the whole run of what we're trying to do and what we're trying to accomplish, and we think we're on the road to get there, at the beginnings of that road, but we think we can get there.
I agree. You're definitely not at the beginning. You're well on your way, and you certainly have my interest. You have my download. That's for sure. Certainly after I can commit to a download for sure after you guys revamp your
Sure.
Spotify,
Hmm.
or at least revamp the app. At least I think
Sure.
you brought up, Micah. You brought up a good point, how you wanted to know why there's not really a billboard for audio drama, and I think the answer to me is very obvious. People who listen to audio dramas are introverts, and they
Mm.
don't see a need for
Right.
recognition. So
Sure.
that's kind of a subtle thing. You were saying how your audience is broad. Fine. But remember, in my opinion, the type of person who will listen to you is someone who is very introverted and just needs a story to comfort them or kind
Mm.
of help them get through a crisis in life. It's a very subtle thing. Whereas a podcast is still, the listeners are introverts mainly, but more
Mm.
often than not, the people who listen to podcasts are also people who are more active people. So it's a
Mm.
slightly different demographic. Not that that should influence you in any way, and it shouldn't, and it doesn't. But I'm just saying, I
That's well
think
said.
that I think there is some element where you can input some introversion, some characters who have social anxiety. I think that's very relatable in audio drama. Yeah, yeah. What
And as
about?
well said
Yeah,
and
go
well
ahead.
received. Not to cut you
Sure.
off, I'm just saying it's well said and well received, because that's an excellent point. And one of the things we also try to accomplish with our stories is appropriate representation, right? Whether that be for anything, personality styles, people themselves. Again, people with disabilities, as we mentioned, several characters are blind. Giving you a couple of examples as well about how those characters and how those personality, emotional, and mental elements play into how there's representation, and how, again, you mentioned very key buzzword there, people being comforted through this story, right? And you think of great stories and how they're told, like Harry Potter and all this kind of thing, why there's such a mass cultural following, people still listen to it going to sleep and all this kind of stuff, because there's something in the story, the character and the way it's delivered, and all of that they find themselves in, or they find a situation that they're in, and this allows them to escape into a person that has similar circumstances, but they escaped. I think, again, that's why Harry Potter is probably so famous. That's, and not that everybody comes from an abusive home as Harry did, but at the same time, you can see how difficult the world can be for someone who feels exceptional of their own, or trying to find their way in the world, and then they finally find their tribe and this place where they really fit. And it has its challenges, but it still feels more like home than where they came from. They're very comforted by those very special moments that are put together, even in the midst of those difficulties, where Harry can appreciate things like having friends and so on and so forth. So for us, it's very similar. We want to write stories, again, that can take people on a journey, comfort them, allow them an escape from whatever they are going through in their lives, to whether that be adventure, whether that be romance, whether that be just to laugh for a while, whether that be back to the old west, back to another period piece, etc. Just even from the purpose of observing what that story is. They might not be entirely interested, but they're interested in observing, even from an audio standpoint. You can observe with audio, um, what's taking place in that particular period of time. So examples to all of those things would be, um, we have one called Diary of Marjorie Blake, which is licensed from a great UK author, Paula Roscoe. And she does, and we were able to license that story, produce the audio drama for it. And the story itself is actually pretty sad. It's about a poor young girl who's dealing with the difficulties of life being a limited female and at that time of power, of influence, and finance, and so on and so forth, and is forced to marry. And she, of course, doesn't love the man she's with, and there's a whole bunch of other things you have to listen to appreciate it. But the idea is, even if you weren't into period pieces and all of that, but you're interested in observing what this may have been like, it's a great tool for doing that. And stories actually wonderful. Several points at which tears are drawn and all that kind of things. It really is a very sad story. But then there's other things we have coming up. And some things that we've done just recently. One called The Long Way Home. It's about a gentleman who loses his job on Thanksgiving of all days and has to go through quite a few challenges. And there are lots of people that have contacted us and goes, man, I really felt for that guy. If one more thing had happened to him, you know. But they appreciated how the story rounded out. They saw a circumstance that they had gone through written into that. And so, again, it was a way for them to be encouraged, even about their own circumstances, to witness how this guy sort of comes full circle, so to speak. And it's not overly extravagant. It's a story about it, just a regular guy working a factory job, these types of things, but it works out really well. We've had other representation of, again, as I mentioned, blind characters or something like that, who have personality, unique personalities, I would say, because I don't ever want to say a personality flaw, but just unique personalities. And we just released a Valentine's Day special called The Table on the Terrace. Our main character is actually a blind woman who's going into a restaurant to go on a blind date, if you will, no pun intended, for a friend of hers. She's subbing in for a friend to meet this guy. Um, and obviously she's not necessarily interested in dating, but she goes to meet this guy for her friend to sort of assess whether or not this date should continue. And that has its own interesting story, because, again, she has certain personality type, the guy has a certain personality type, and there's an interesting way that story is put together. But to see her, the representation of that character there, she has a seeing eye dog, the whole nine, or service dog, and etc. And then to things that are upcoming. There's a one I'm very excited about called Dark Blocks. It's about a blind gentleman who lives alone in an apartment in New York. And of course, like many can probably attest, if they're extremely independent, they know how many steps it takes to get to the local grocery, how many steps to the local pharmacy, and all this kind of thing. And if they've never really branched outside of that world, but that is their world, they know where things are, what's going on, etc. And he's one of these people. So he goes to his local grocery like any other day. He has a very regular routine. He's a very organized guy, and right now that's already describing a certain personality, right? So he's extremely analytical. He's very quiet. He's an introvert, as you mentioned. He only gets out to go out and do the things he needs to do, but he's not unsociable. He knows his local grocer and knows his local pharmacist and etc. But he goes out to the grocery store this one day, like he's done for the past 35 years, and an apocalyptic event happens. Think Walking Dead kind of thing. And now when he's coming out of the grocery store, there's all of this chaos and all of these things that are happening, a real world of worlds type of shift, or World War Z type of shift. And now, the 382 steps he would have taken to get back to his front door, that he's been so sure of for all these years, is now in disarray because the world has shifted while he was at the grocery store. And the beautiful part about the Story More platform and service altogether is simply this, right? Every single listener is enjoying this experience as this blind protagonist is, because they can't see either. So they're all going on this journey with him with the exact same level of experience. They all have the same element to work with, their ears, and that's it. And so it's things like that that I believe bring a great equalization to the listener experience, and everybody can enjoy this without anybody having a leg up on anything. And that's the beauty of, I think, a good audio drama.
Yeah, yeah. Have you done much putting these stories up on YouTube? Because there's a lot of YouTube channels that also have audio drama that they just put up on their channel. Are you guys dabbling in YouTube? What do you think about that?
We're actually that's part of our plans, and as we mentioned, while we're putting up Spotify and some other things, making sure we're shored up in several different areas, we plan to launch a YouTube channel that will again provide some great opportunities to listen there. And again, I didn't mention earlier, but all these are free offerings. Very limited ad at the beginning pre-roll, so that you can enjoy the entire story ad free without interruptions. And that way it keeps that the ability to enjoy this without any cost. And again, once we add YouTube, it'll be just more of the same. Another great place to find us. So we're willing to be distributed as much as possible. And again, later on down the road, we'll consolidate more towards just those applications on our website. Still remaining some offerings throughout regular podcast distribution circuits. But right now, the world is our oyster, and we'll make these decisions as we go along. Our goal at the moment is just to get out as many great stories as we can, giving as many voice talents the opportunity to express themselves as we can, and move as many people as we can to enjoy, sit, relax, gather the family, whatever the circumstance is for them, and enjoy a good story.
Yeah, it's so beautiful. I guess you could, in addition to creating a page, you could just basically put up each of the stories as episodes of a podcast and then just automatically distribute that to all the platforms all at once too. There's that choice too. Yeah.
True. Yeah.
Um,
Excellent.
yeah, no, I just kind of wondered why you didn't do that. Not that it's wrong, but I just noticed, well, wait a minute, wouldn't it be easier for you if each time you produced a story, just have it be a podcast episode and then just produce it that way? I guess, yeah, why did you set it up like as like a catalog page rather than just a flowing podcast, I guess?
Our goal was again to sort of emulate other streaming platforms. We wanted to develop a community, and again, this is a developing strategy, but the goal is to try to develop a community around each offering, giving each offering its own branding, giving each show its own lane and its own channel, so to speak. Some of those will be series that are serial pieces that have episodes and season counts, etc. Others of these are going to be standalones. Others are going to be, a three-part series. That the story I just mentioned to you about with the UK author, that one's named Diary of Marjorie Blake, and that's a 9-part series. Each part is about 45 minutes to an hour long. So we just wanted to make sure each story had its own identity without it being just a flowing river of stories under the Storymore name with various episode titles.
Yeah, I see. Excellent. Have you ever watched the film The Lobster?
Don't think I have.
Oh boy, you could do a lot of great audio stories with that. So the concept of it in one sentence, the concept is that a group of people in the future are sent to a hotel to find either a husband or a wife. And if you don't find your husband or wife within 45 days, you're turned into an animal of your choice. And yeah, it's really weird. And it's like a sci-fi comedy where there's elements of comedy and sci-fi at the same time, you know? So yeah, that you could do something with that. Yeah, or a version of that. Yeah, that's an interesting one too.
That is the fun, and like you said, for most of the time, it really is these great pieces of story and concept, etc. And that's the fun of it. Where can these things go? How can we make them? How can for me that's a great part of the fun here is I'll have this great idea. Man, wouldn't it be great if they do a movie about that? Of course, I have absolutely zero influence in Hollywood at this point in my life, so the likelihood of that actually coming to pass is really low unless I do it myself. And then for some of these ideas, again, they would require a great deal of casting fusion just to get the visualization of what I had in my head. So really that's the fun of doing these in audio dramas. It takes away all of the visual stress and story stress and how I would do it. And it's just much easier to put some of this together as a audio drama. I can save the special effects budget and everything else, and still get the general idea of the story across, and sometimes very convincingly so, just by doing these audio dramas. So I love this medium, and I'll be sticking with it for the long haul.
That sounds really good. That sounds really good. So I feel that we're towards the questions part. Now, here's the thing. We have two people in our audience. We
Mm-hmm.
have both Latabo from the Pretoria office of Aaron's Opinion, and then we have Mishek from the Malawi office of
Mm-hmm.
Aaron's Opinion. But before we get into them, because I'm going to actually let them ask at least two or three questions when usually let them ask one. I set up more time today because I felt that I knew that this would be a great conversation. I am sure that you have questions about Aaron Richmond and Aaron's opinion. So really dig under my skin, man. What do you really want to know about me? As I say, if to really make me sweat to see if I'm worth my salt as a podcaster, what do you want to know?
It, Now, is that my open question or is that open to the
That's
audience?
you. That's
Okay.
you.
So
I didn't unmute them. So that's you, definitely. Yeah.
okay. So
Hmm.
my I'm very simple. I'm because I believe talent can be found absolutely anywhere, and that's been proven already in what we do. And my question would be, how do you approach characters when you're given a script and a certain role? How do you approach that particular character in preparation for recording?
What I've done in the past is what I would do for Storymore, where I would basically know what the character is ahead of time. I would know what the lines are. I would read the lines. And then what I tend to do is act it out a lot first, just for myself. I'll just talk to myself and embody the character and practice the character and figure out, well, how, like, what is their voice? How do they talk? You know, I have to like practice like shaping and forming the character's voice in my mind first. And then I
Mm.
do it out loud with my voice and say, well, okay, is that what he sounds like? Is that really how he would talk? And then I do a lot of takes on the microphone. But that's how I would embody a specific character. And the reason you're asking is because there secretly probably is something that I could do to help you. So I can't help but be nosy. So what character do you think you would want me for?
Well, there's several at this point, as these stories are constantly being written and those types of things. I asked that question because generally, when people are working with us, they range everywhere from amateur, just got started yesterday, would love to know how to get into the business, all the way to those who have been doing this for 30 and 40 years and have worked for large brands. I mean, we have Katie Lee, who's done a ton of Disney, and other shows, Lego Star Wars, etc., as Han Solo and so many others. She did Muppet Babies and all this kind of thing, and again, been doing this for nearly 40 years, all the way down to those again who just started yesterday, and kids from being teenagers. We have Amadi Chapata, who was a part of Apple TV's Emmy-winning series Ghost Rider, but Amadi is 18 and had been working with us for a couple of years, all the way to we have some older characters from Ontario, Canada. They're right around 62, 63. So the wide berth of those that can do this is very vast. But from that standpoint, there's also a difference in their experience and how they approach characters. And as for anybody in your audience that may be listening and finding some looking for tips or whatever about how to do this well, and to let you know some of the things we look for, it's how can you we the worst thing you can do as a voice actor is grab a role today, unless you're just very naturally talented at it. But to grab a role today and just read it and press record while you're reading, and that's the first time you've ever done it, and that kind of thing. And we get that sometimes. People just figure they can pick up a script and just be that person. One of the key things that I appreciate about Tanya, as I mentioned earlier in the podcast, Tanya embodies everything about what the character is. So she doesn't just read her part. She reads the entire script, understands the story. Why does the character feel that way? Even if it's not parenthetically given, she pays attention to everything. What the other characters said, how they said it, even without hearing them, just understanding from the script, this is probably the mood, this is the vibe, this is what's happening. So this is probably how my character is going to respond. In many cases, there's not a backstory for the character. We just wrote the instance that was key to this, 27 minutes we're putting together, but she's put something together in her own mind about why that character is that way, where they're from, accent. Did we, if we required an accent, maybe it'd be cool if this character had an accent, and she delivers all of these really subconscious, uh, intangible elements into her delivery of the character, which, as I mentioned, she gives, three totally different takes. And you'd be surprised how many people send us in three takes of the exact same read. Like, they didn't change anything. The inflection, their approach, none of it. And it's just literally the same line done three times. And it's like, now you're not quite getting. We want three totally different takes because the energy may be different based on what another actor is doing. But from that standpoint, that's important to know how people approach characters. And to put a cap on that, the other thing that Tanya does do really well is there's a lot of things that aren't parenthetical direction that she will just throw in because it's totally natural to the character. Do they sniff for some reason? Do they have allergies? Is the character moving? Even, is it plausible that the character is moving? Like, are they bending over to get something? That might reflect how their voice sounds when they're doing something. Are they looking for something in their purse or pocket while they're talking? All of these things play into how she approaches the voice, because it's never just reading the words on the page. It's, let me get those words down, but what is the character doing? How are they feeling? What's the energy and what's being said at that time? And that's what she delivers. So that's why that was probably the most important question I could ask you or anybody else that would be joining us in the voice talent pool, volunteer or no. We still want the best versions of these characters as possible. And there's no small roles, because every role normally requires some bit of energy to it, respecting what it adds to the story. So that was my reason in asking, and that's really the only major question I actually had.
All right. All right. Well, if you don't mind, why don't we open up the phones here, as we say, and go over. So we're going to start over in South Africa and then head on over to Malawi. So here we go. Okay. All right. There he goes. Latabo, go. South Africa, Pretoria. I'll let you today. Uh, yeah, you go. You can ask at least two good questions today. I have a little bit more time. Go ahead.
Okay, good afternoon, everybody. Hope everybody's doing good. This is Latab here. Well, okay, I'm hearing I think it's I don't know, I'm not sure what's the name.
Oh, his name is Micah. Micah.
Mhm.
Micah, okay. Okay. So, okay, I just want to know something. Well, about storytelling, because I hear you were talking about storytelling. So, like what process do you go through when it comes to storytelling, and like how do you do your audio series or your audio dramas?
Well, from a storytelling standpoint, so to speak. Now, I don't know if you're meaning the writing portion or the technical portion. Was there either
Um,
one?
well, okay, sorry to cut you there. I mean, like everything, like from
Okay.
writing to also the editing side of things.
Yeah. So as mentioned, for us, and again, our process is just our process. We're not saying it's right, wrong, or different. It's just what works for our company, because we
Mm,
prefer to be as organic as possible for what we feel is the best possible end result. But normally,
mm,
there's some inspiration of an idea toward a story. It's normally, wouldn't it be cool if? That's normally how these things start. Or wouldn't it be neat if there was this sort of plot twist or idea or these characters or whatever, which leads to a script.
mhm,
Typically, there's always an idea followed by some kind of cover art or some imagery, some tangible that we go, okay, we can get behind
mm,
this, and normally we have a good title for it. That's normally how it all starts, and then from there we add story to that title. We don't approach, can we do that? Is that too much? That's never the idea. the idea is good. Let's roll with that.
Mm.
We'll worry about, amount of voice cast or sound effects and all that kind of thing later on. Let's just get the story down. So we write a story out. Um, we have our script writing software. We do that. Then we'll get it. Then once we have all the characters, because now there's a story, we know what the talent might look like on who we might need to have for these particular characters. We look into our talent pool and go, okay, this person would be good for this role. This person would be good for this role. If there's a question, we'll send them a couple pieces of line, for audition or whatever, just to make sure we had it right, and they'll send us back something, and then we consider it casted. We'll send out the script. They'll record on their own. They'll send us back a file, and then we start editing those files, and what we call a dialogue round, which is nothing but getting the voices right and separated and put together. And sometimes that includes atmospheric arrangement, where they're placed at different places in the room, whatever. Then we add an atmosphere, or sound effects that kind of get along. So it's just putting pieces together of the puzzle as we go. And then we kind of do a sound effects, or excuse me, sound design run on that, make sure everything is placed around the listener as much as we need it to be, movements, etc. And then we close that off as what we consider a dry run. Which means it's ready to go. You could listen to it today, but there's no music, and that's no fun. So we come back around and we add the music in, which is normally custom done toward whatever it is we're working on. We listen to the whole dry piece and write music as we go. And then once we add the music, then it's considered a wet edit and ready to go. Everything after that is just enhancements, like ads and so on and so forth. And so anyway, then we go to distribution. Once everything has been listened to, we do a screening for it. We make sure we've listened to see, okay, was that the right thing? Was that the right, did it all turn out okay on the system? Because sometimes it'll sound different in a car compared to Bluetooth, or from Bluetooth to headphones. So again, we have to just make sure it's appropriate to where it sounds good, no matter what you're listening to, even though we're prioritizing it for headphones. And then we distribute after that, and that goes out to Apple Podcast and the areas where we are distributing, and then it's on to the next story.
Oh, okay. So actually, this is my final question that I'm going to ask you. So, okay, say for example, then a person then wants to maybe do an audition. Like, how do they do that?
Sure. So anybody that would be interested in working with us can email us at talent@storymore.com. You can also email our casting director, Jillian Thomas. It's jthomas@storymore.com, or you can even email me as well, mthomas@storymore.com, and just we can send you some material to read if you'd like, or you can just send us an open demo of some things that you've done, some characters you've done, or character reel or any of the sort. The idea is that we've just made a connection on what kind of talent you have, and we'd love to work from that.
All right. Yeah. Great. Thank you, Latabo. Awesome as always. All right. Let me try now. I don't know, his mic may or may not be on, but let's try. All right, let's try. His name is Mishek, and he's from Malawi. Let's try to get him on. I'll open his mic and see if he wants to come in. I don't know. Let's try. All right, Mishek. Do you have a question? Is your mic on over there in Malawi? How's it going? He might not. His mic not may not be on. All right. Well, anyway, if he does come in, we'll hear him. He might have come in. Mishak, is that you? Okay, yeah. Anyway, so Micah, do you have any final questions for me before we walk out of here today? I think that was an absolutely stunning episode, but do you have any final questions for me?
Yeah, so I would just say, more than anything, probably in your assessment, and this could include anything you may or may not have heard from us, because I know you may not have actually gotten some of our material due to the limits on Spotify or any of that. So I don't know if you've actually heard or had the opportunity to hear any of our stuff, but if you have, great, our stuff included. What are some audio drama podcasts that you found yourself to have enjoyed through the years?
Well, it's not quite a podcast. I'm a up, up. Mishek, is that you from Malawi? Mishek?
I am, yes, I'm listening.
Okay, go ask your question to Micah. Micah, that's Mishek from Malawi. Go, Mishek. Ask your question.
All right, thanks, Aaron, for recognizing me. And Micah, I'm glad. Big up, guys. You're doing a very great job because all along I've been like looking for this kind of opportunity whereby a visual impaired man must be able to express themselves in the absence of the eyes. Like, so this acting like audio dramas, it's a good approach because sorry for the background noise. Now, I wanted to ask like a kind of question, like say, are you specializing in a certain genre, like, or you just taking whatsoever the genres? And I think the other question has been asked by Litabo that if one would want to do the audition, we would like to get some links.
Sure. So we consider ourselves specialists in every genre because it's our goal to make sure that we have every genre covered with some kind of content. So from that standpoint, I would say that we're better at doing westerns than we are at doing sci-fi. We try to do them all with the same level of quality and accuracy to the things that make those genres true to their form. So we do it all to answer that question, and we do every genre. From that standpoint, as I mentioned earlier, if you want to get involved, you can certainly email some audition to us or a request for some lines to read for an audition. You can send that email, but just your name and just say, "Hey, I'm interested in acting with you guys," and that would be to talent, TALENT, talent at storymore.com, or you can email me directly at mthomas@storymore.com, or our casting director, Jillian Thomas at jthomas at storymore.com. So either one of those works just as well. And we'll get some lines back to you. Or if you already have some demos or just some things you'd like to read, or characters you just want to send us 30 seconds worth or whatever, send that as well. And again, we just use this to assess a little bit of talent, your voice type, and from there we kind of pick up from there. Again, we work with people of all levels of skill, talent, and experience. And our goal is to make sure that when working with us, it's another step toward getting even better at representing yourself as a character.
All right. Thanks so much. Can I extend my question?
Please, one more, Mishek. One more shorter, smaller question. One more, Mishek.
Oh, okay. Then you can move on. You can move on, Aaron. Don't worry.
Okay, no problem. We're running out of time. I have to go to in a moment I have to get ready for my next event today. So that's why I'm saying that. It's nothing personal about you. Sure. Yeah, go ahead. One more.
All right. Because the reason why I was asking that question is that I'm working on an inclusive and innovative sport project. It hasn't got patented yet, but it's still in the pipeline. And I attached that with my true story. I was learning to write some scripts. I would want one day to have like my story told attached with my innovation. So that's why I was asking that question to say, do they incorporate things like these, like true stories?
Incredible. Okay, so Mishek, let me explain it, and you explained it well. Let me just fill Micah in one sentence. Mishek, that was an incredible question. That was incredible. I've never thought of that. So Mishek has had quite a journey, and we'll connect later today, Micah, or another time soon, whenever you can. We'll connect. We need to send a text or a WhatsApp message back and forth. But anyway, once we do, I'll send you Mishek's episode so you can know what he's talking about. But yes, that is a great question. Have you thought about? This is our last question for today. I do want to walk out on this point today, but have you thought of incorporating true stories into Storymore? That's an incredible idea. Yeah, what do you think?
For us, the goal is that it's a story. It doesn't have to be fiction or anything of that sort. The idea is that it is a story, something that people can connect with and engage with on an emotional and mental level, so that they leave remembering the story. As it was once said, people might forget what you said, but they'll never forget how you made them feel. We think that same is true in stories. And people have powerful stories that can be told, which is why films like, Still Magnolias and whatever last through the years, because there's nothing majorly extravagant about it in terms of differences, plot twists, and so on and so forth. It's just sometimes people have powerful personal stories that include personal tragedy or accomplishments, and those stories deserve to be told in a way that's palatable to people. And these days, that's in cinematic form. So it's certainly no issue or restriction to us if the story is true. We just care that it's a good one.
And his story is both
understand.
true. Yeah, yeah. All right, Mishek. Thank you from the bottom of my heart to yours, mate. Thank you. And Mishek, we wish you from all over the world, we wish you a safe, blessed, and wonderful and happy day over there in the great nation of Malawi. All right, man. Take care.
Thanks so much.
Welcome. We'll connect. We'll connect soon, man. I'll get him into our group. All right then. Okay.
All right.
So finally, Micah, if someone wants to get in touch with Storymore, go ahead. What are the plugs? How do they get in touch?
Yeah. So again, make sure that you listen. Go to Spreaker.com. That's Spreaker.com. And just search Storymore. You'll find our page there, and you can find our offerings that are available there. That library is mirrored on Apple Podcasts, and again, soon to Spotify. So keep your eyes and ears open for that, as well as to YouTube, or you can go to storymore.com as well. We're also available on Google Play to download there. Again, all searchable via the word Storymore as one word. If you want to reach out to us, you have some questions from the press side of things, you can email Jay Rivera at storymore.com. He is our SVP of marketing and public relations. And for anything else in general, hey, I'm always open. Email me at Mike or M Thomas. Again, that's M Thomas at storymore.com. Just ask a question. We'd be glad to either direct you to the right party within our company to help out, or of course, I'm constantly doing 120 things for Storymore at any one given time. So I'll be glad to assist you personally as well. Thank you so much for the opportunity, Aaron. It's been great to share our story today.
Absolutely. Absolutely. As we would say in my French language, avec plaisir. À bientôt. See you soon. Of course, you are so welcome. And we'll basically walk out today by saying thank you so much for listening, everybody. And as we say here at Aaron's Opinion, keep telling beautiful stories, keep doing all these great dramas and stories. And if nothing else, help one person today, help 1 million people tomorrow. If you're still surviving on YouTube, thanks so much. Like the video, comment below, and tickle that bell notification to know when we go live next on YouTube. All right, everybody. Micah, thank you so much for spending part of your day. Whatever day of the week it is, I don't actually know what day of the week it is today, because I live in a universe and work from home. I don't know. Whatever day of the week this is, thanks for joining us. All right, mate. We'll connect later today over on the email. We got to get you into my WhatsApp side. I got to get your number and text all that. But anyway, we'll connect over on email later today. So thanks so much. And until then, keep doing great stories. Take care, everybody.